Today, everybody's talking about virtual reality. But I think, frankly, that virtual reality is a rather miserable idea. It simply means let us reproduce in an artificial digital medium our experience of reality. I think that a much more interesting notion, crucial to understand what goes on today, is the opposite. Not virtual reality, but the reality of the virtual. That is to say, reality, by this I mean efficacy, effectiveness, real effects produced, generated by something which does not yet fully exist, which is not yet fully actual. In what sense can we talk about this? Oh, in many, maybe even too many senses. At least in three senses. If we take as the starting point the well-known Lacanian triad of imaginary, symbolic, and real. We have, to put it in simple terms, imaginary virtual, symbolic virtual, and real virtual. First, a little bit about the first two of them, less important, and then, of course, the big topic, the real. Imaginary virtual, what it is. Isn't it clear if we look at our most common daily experience of ourselves and of others, that how when we deal with another person, phenomenologically, that is to say the way we immediately experience them, we erase, abstract from the image of the other person, our partner, certain features which are simply too embarrassing to be kept in mind all the time. Like, I talk to you. Of course, rationally, I know you are defecating, you are sweating, not to mention other things, but quite literally, when I interact with you, this is not part of the image I have of you. So when I deal with you, I'm basically not dealing with the real you. I'm dealing with the virtual image of you. And this image has reality, in the sense that it nonetheless structures the way I am dealing with you. And again, this idealization is crucial. The negative proof, a wonderful one, would have been letters between James Joyce and his wife Nora, where, as far as I know, they went very, very far, almost to the end, into accepting each other in the vulgar reality of bodies, like all the sounds, the bad smells, and so on. That was even part of their sexual interaction. It's incredible. I admire this in Joyce. So, okay, this would be the first elementary level. Imaginary virtual, in the sense of the virtual image which determines how we interact with other people. Virtual image in the sense of, although we interact with real people, we erase, we behave as if whole strata of the other person are not there. Second level, already a more complex one, symbolic virtual. Oh, it's elementary. Let's think about an experience known well to all of us of experiencing authority. Let us say paternal authority. Isn't it clear that this authority, in order to be operative, in order to be experienced precisely, that's the nice paradox, in order to be experienced as actual, effective authority, it has to remain virtual. Virtual in the sense of a threat. If authority is enacted too directly, it is paradoxically experienced as a sign of impotence. Concretely, father who truly is an authority doesn't have to beat you or to shout at you and so on. It's just this look, a threatening look, and you obey. If your father loses his nerves and slaps you, starts to shout and so on, it can be physically painful, but let's admit it, there is always an aspect of something ridiculous, impotent. There is something of of a furious outburst of a puppet, of a clown in it. Again, this is then one clear example of how symbolic authority, in order to be operative, that's the paradox I want to emphasize, has to remain virtual. So it's not just it is actual already as virtual. No, it's actual only as virtual. If it's fully actualized as a realized threat, father beats you, shouts at you, it's self-destructive. It undermines itself as authority. Another example of how the virtual dimension is operative at the symbolic level would have been beliefs. Are we aware to what extent our beliefs today are virtual? By virtual, I mean, in this case, attributed to others, presupposed. They don't actually exist, they are virtual in the sense that nobody really has to believe. We only have to presuppose another person to believe. Elementary example, which I'm almost embarrassed to mention. If you are a father, a mother, small children, Christmas. Of course, if somebody asks you, do you really believe in Santa Claus Christmas? You would say no. I just pretend because of the children, it's not to disappoint them. But then we know how the game goes on and on. If you ask the children, they say, no, we just play that we are naive, not to disappoint our parents and to make it sure that we get the presents and so on and so on. But it's not only with children, it's even with our political life, I'm tempted to claim. Now in our so-called, wrongly so-called, I claim, because we believe more than ever, in our so-called cynical era, for example, I don't think anyone believes in democracy, but nonetheless we want to maintain appearances. That is to say, there is some purely virtual entity whom we do not want to disappoint, who has to be kept innocent, ignorant, because of whom we have to pretend. So the paradox is that although nobody effectively believes, it is enough that everybody presupposes someone else to believe, and the belief is actual. It structures reality. It functions. Again, the paradox is here then similar as the one of authority. It's not only that a belief which is a virtual belief, not belief of an actual person, but always attributed to other. Let's call it, along Lacanian lines, the subject supposed to believe. It's not only that a belief already as virtual, as merely presupposed, already is actual. I'm tempted to claim that many of our daily beliefs, in order to function socially as beliefs, have to remain virtual in this sense. Because if we believe too immediately, then I think it's again self-destructive for an ideology. We no longer appear normal subjects, we appear idiots. Like we all know how it is when we encounter somebody who takes too directly his or her religious beliefs or political beliefs. There is something monstrous about somebody who directly identifies with it. It is as if he or she is no longer a real person. It is as if he or she turns into a kind of a puppet. So I hope now these two levels are relatively clear. The first two levels of virtuality, imaginary virtuality, symbolic virtuality. But now, of course, the true treasure is waiting for us, real virtuality. So, the real virtual. Well, the problem here, the catch, of course, is the notion of the real. So, this may appear boring, but we have to go again through the triad imaginary, symbolic, real. Because when Lacan defines this triad as the triad of a not, it means that they are literally interwoven in the sense that the entire triad is reflected into each of the three terms, which means, to put it bluntly, that there is, again, imaginary real, symbolic real, and real real. What would be the imaginary real? Images, but images which are so strong, so traumatic, that they are real, too strong to be perceived, but still images. Simply think about incredible, breathtaking catastrophes, think about monsters, think about precisely what in science fiction or horror is called the thing. Think about movies like Alien, these terrifying creatures too strong to be directly confronted, but nonetheless it's imaginary because it's an image which is too strong to be confronted. Even if you cannot confront it, we are still moving at the imaginary level. That would be the imaginary real. Then the symbolic real. It's simply, for example, scientific discourse, scientific formulas like quantum physics. Why is this real? For a simple reason. The minimum definition of the real for Lacan is that which resists symbolization, inclusion into our universe of meaning. And isn't it that precisely which happens, for example, with quantum physics? What is quantum physics? Formulas which work, experimentally confirmed, and so on and so on, but we cannot translate them into our daily experience of ordinary reality. As we all know, this is what is so traumatic about quantum physics. We literally cannot understand it. Not in the sense that we, common people, idiots, cannot understand it, only a couple of scientists can. Even they cannot. In what sense? In the sense that it just works, but if you try to build a consistent ontology out of it, again, you get meaningless results. You get time running backwards, you get parallel universes or whatever. In other words, you get things which simply are meaningless with regard to our ordinary notion of reality. So this would be symbolic real. Symbolic, obviously it is symbolic, formulas, pure signifiers. They function, it's a functioning machine, but meaningless. We cannot make any sense out of it. We cannot relate it to our experience, which is why we try so desperately to do it, which is why we try to invent metaphors to imagine quantum universe, but it cannot be done. Then, finally, we are coming to the real, which it's precisely not what is usually identified as the real. This would have been the first real, the imaginary real, a too traumatic image. What then is this famous real, the very core of the real? Let me approach it at two levels. The first level is still relatively close to the symbolic order. It would have been all that accompanies the symbolic level as its obscene shadow. Think about army units, how they function. You have discipline, symbolic machine, symbolic order, drill, and so on. But as we all know, this is sustained by a kind of obscene, shadowy reality of, among other things, so-called marching chants. In every movie about the Marines, you hear them. These songs which are extremely interesting songs that soldiers sing while they are training, marching, because they are characterized by meaningless rhymes combined